My name is Rich Ferguson. I'm the Chief Technical Officer at Coleridge. Ladies and gentlemen, what a year change. Last year, we didn't even talk about AI. We were briefly even mentioning it. And all of a sudden now, it's permeated every parts of our lives. And for the first time in the history of probably society, do we have a technology that's not led by a government agency, a feudal government, a monastery, or something? We have technology that's being ran by commercial industry, which is bizarre when you think about it. Just 60, 70 years ago, some of you might remember, we had the rocket age and nuclear age, this kind of trifecta of ideologies and technology coming together. And that was led by scientists from governments. It was not led by commercial industry. And here we have this thing called artificial intelligence. It's everywhere, everywhere. I mean, even my son, his grades got mysteriously better the last few months, and I can't figure out why. It's everywhere, and our kids, our children are leading the effort like they would on anything that's new. They got terms like vibe. If you've never heard of vibing, that if your kids start using that, it means the AI is doing their work for them. So just be advised. I'm really glad to introduce this panel. We're going to be doing a couple things. We're going to have a discussion with some very good panelists. We're very lucky to have. Then we're going to do a survey, because I want to know what you think about AI. It's going to be live. And then we're going to do a demonstration of how Coleridge is implementing AI responsibly. Okay? Sound good, everybody? Anybody got a problem with that? Raise your hand. Okay. Okay, as long as my boss saw who was good, we're good. She likes when I bring up her name. So, okay, here's our panelists. So Josh is probably our star at Coleridge. He's a data scientist. He's in charge of what he and I talk almost weekly, if not daily, on the risk to our data, because he's the one that's bringing in the data and exporting the data. I got Baron Rodriguez. He works at Wested, and he's the executive director of the Data Integration Support Center. You guys all know this because it's all over the place, and I'm really glad to have him here. He's very well vetted and invested in AI, so he understands this. I have Tandu, who is on our technology advisory board. She's the CTO for Precisely. She understands the commercial implications of AI, and she's really heavily involved. She's got her doctorate in computer science, and really glad to have her. And then, of course, there's me. Okay, what are we talking about here? So we're not just talking about AI. We're really talking about a unique facet of AI, which is this race. Everybody's in a hurry to implement AI without really considering, I believe this personally, without really considering the impact of it. It's kind of scary. So our discussion is really focused around the ethical and accountable uses of AI and how we can implement that in a responsible way, okay? Like I said, we're gonna have a discussion about this and then a demonstration. But before that, if you got your cell phone on you, please scan this QR code. Okay, and please do this, because this is helping us. It'll help us in our development efforts. And let me know when you guys are ready. I'm going to use, is Klaus back there? Klaus, are you using your, there you go. I'm watching. You're the last one, okay? So when you're done, I'll move the slide, okay? Just raise your hand. Oh, he's not done. He's not done yet. Are you done? Okay, anybody need more time on this? Okay, let's take a look. Wow, look at this. Here are the questions. What should we prioritize? We're doing some AI development. Can you guys see this okay? No, the screen came down. Hold on one second. Okay, Mr. IT guy, there it is. I think it's, let me have to stop this presentation real quick.
Came up brief on here.
Did it really?
Yeah, okay. Started to when you went back.
Okay, we're hacking as we go. That's all right. Okay, here we go. Okay, so what should we do at Coleridge to make AI responsible? And right now it looks like, because I think look, everybody's changing their things. All right, you guys quit taking the survey. Everybody's like, okay, it's the herd effect here. So comprehensive online tooling, coding, sure, that's important. Integrating latest AI model, it's important. Those are all the things that we are currently seeing in society, whether it's Anthropic's new model or Grok or Google's models. That seems to be where the industry is focused. Transparency and documentation, I think is very, very important. The stronger security, and it's funny, that's not the highest. I kind of expected that to be the highest, but really it's the ethical use of AI. Like, what are we using AI for at Coleridge? So we have a development team. We have quite a few people working on this, and this is what we'll focus on from this crowd. So I appreciate the survey. Okay, we still got people doing this. It's funny. Okay, please. Oh, really? They probably want money. What do you think? There's probably a paywall now. Okay, we've had quite a few respondents though. Try that again. Try it again. Let's see if that works. Yeah? Thank you for the feedback there. Who said that, by the way? I have my glasses on. Okay, of course. Yeah, this is good. Okay, all right. Okay. Let's talk about this. So we have this is going to be a lively discussion, I think, and I want to start off first with a question to Tandu, who's been here she's the CTO precisely, and Tandu and I talked early last couple weeks just on the responsible use of artificial intelligence, and I kind of wanted to get you from your point of view, Tandu. Like, what do you see the current trends right now from the commercial side of?
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I do spend a lot of time talking with our customers and also with analysts, but customers like yourselves actually are more the pulse check from what happens in the real world. And every year, Precisely collaborates on a data and analytics trend survey. We collaborate with Drexel University of Business and College of Business. And they conduct this survey across 500 plus organizations with data leaders like yourselves. And not surprisingly, number one trend that the survey results showed, and I always hear from wherever I am speaking, is that 76% of the participants in the survey reported data-driven decision-making is top priority for their 2025 goals. And how many of you have that as a top goal in this room? Can you raise your hands? Okay. It's a little bit less than I thought, but it's 1/3 I see at the moment. And then the number two trend related to that we are seeing is AI. Last 2-3 years, especially with generative AI, is driving demand for higher data integrity and higher governance standards and higher quality. It's almost playing like a magnifier role for organizations to see, oh, I got to do something with AI. Everybody is saying that we should take advantage of this. Hey, wait a minute. Do I have the right data? Is it in the level of quality I need for this specific use case? And how am I going to govern this thing? What's the source for the AI models, and are the outcomes are correct? So AI is really becoming a big driver of data integrity and governance in general. In fact, 60% of the participants in the survey stated that AI is a big influence in their programs, yet only 12% think that their data is AI ready. And then the third thing we are seeing, cost and resource constraints are real for organizations. And skill set is a challenge as well, because we were seeing this skill set shortage with first cloud, and then with data scientists, data engineers, and now with AI, machine learning, and combination of data science and AI together. So that is becoming a challenge. And then the last trend that we are seeing is, in fact, enrichment is becoming quite critical. I will give you one example to show what do I mean by enrichment. So you have your organization's data, let's say your state's data, and you can get insights from that. But that alone may not give you all the attributes you need to make the best business or state level decision. You need to understand perhaps mobility of the people between states, not just in your state. You need to understand how that state's data relates to federal data. That what we sometimes call alternative data sets becomes very important. United Nations, for example, recognizes 195 countries and country codes. And if you look at the International Standards Organization, they recognize 249 country codes. Both are correct. But if you are making a business decision, you have to be consistent in the context that you are using these data points. So not just looking at 1, 2, 3, or one geography or one state, but looking at a little bit broader data set and enriching your decisions with that is becoming really important.
Oh, it's great for the trends. I think it's good the way, because you have a commercial impact, plus you also are dealing with GDPR and a bunch of other, so the world, it's not just the US, we have a US kind of centric ideology, I think, at times, and the world is dealing with this everywhere. Yeah. And so we're not the only nation or people that are struggling with this, but I'm glad that we're talking about it. I appreciate the trends, Baron. Let me ask you, she talked a little bit about governance. She mentioned, the use of it and how it's being operated from a disk point of view and using both federal and data sets. Tell me what you think the trends in AI are going to be, or like look towards.
Yeah. So right now, I think the national trend that we're seeing is we're seeing that there's a lot of people who think they know a lot about artificial intelligence and talk about it a lot, but in practical application, they're not ready. Yeah. Really going along with what Tendu was saying, there's a lot of work to be put into your governance processes, your data, making sure the data is quality, and really spending time developing some very specific use cases for your organization if you're going to get into it. And just know that I'm saying this from experience of overseeing this at a company of over 1,000 people. There is that push, like we've got to bring it in. Everybody's moving ahead. There's this pressure, this outside pressure. Absolutely. That everybody's moving ahead of you because you're not using artificial intelligence. And that might be true to some extent, but the truth is there are limited applications with generative AI that are really doing really well at this point. And those that do are in mature areas, right? When you think of things like Waze, right, where you've got a lot of traffic information that's been being tracked and structured over many years, that's a mature data set that you can really do some incredible things with now, transportation data, with generative AI, because it's been years of collection and formatting of structuring of the data for applications. When you're looking at government agencies, governance is often a problem, and you start to talk about multiple agencies, that increases the complexity immensely. And so really being more specific around what you're looking to do and not try to boil the ocean with artificial intelligence is really the way we in these agencies that are here should be looking at it, because you have limited resources, and there's a lot of work that has to be done up front to get ready for it.
Would you say, you're bringing up the idea of the boil the ocean. I love that term, because it's like we'll use AI for everything, but are you suggesting that it's best to maybe go into AI, and we're going to talk about some of the challenges that people face is to maybe go lead into it by having a business case in mind before you implement, right? And can you explain maybe how that might work? You talked Waze, but.
Right. Well, earlier we talked about resources, right, and how expensive they are. For instance, we're bringing on a NLP. Everybody know what an NLP is? Natural language processing engineer, to help us, because we realize there's a big gap in building the ability, for instance, for a chatbot, interactive chatbot on data, to really be able to translate that information for the artificial intelligence models. That's an expensive resource, right? And if you're not planning up front for those kinds of things, or working with a vendor to bring those kinds of resources on, it can get very costly very quickly. And so really honing in on what you really want to use your artificial intelligence for is important to that. So for instance, right now, code generation, I would say, and you're going to talk more about that,
Yeah,
I'm sure, but code generation is amazing on a few of the specific LLMs. I have some examples that I can give probably tomorrow in one of the sessions where one of our developers needed to rewrite a whole application. Would have taken 2 weeks to rewrite it. He used Claude Anthropic, went through, did some fairly advanced commands. He's not an AI engineer, but was able to put this all together and rewrite the program in 2 days. The 2 days were because he needed to do some quality assurance and do some minor tweaks to data calls and things like that. But he came back and this is amazing. And so we're going to look for more application.
That's what they call vibing, by the way.
That was vibing. Yeah, he cheated. Yeah. No, he had much more work on his plate. So I was like, oh, now I can assign you more.
Hey, you shouldn't feel guilty about vibing.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, right?
Yeah. So there are some very great mature cases like that where you can utilize and harness this technology and really increase your efficiency as you're building applications.
And so those are some of the challenges. And Tendu, we talked earlier, and we were talking about some of the challenges on our call. Can you kind of go through? He mentioned the cost as a challenge. Can you add or take away from that at all? What are your thoughts on the challenges?
So, in terms of the challenges with the AI implementations, the number one challenge that I see is data quality. And I was attending the Gartner Data and Analytics Conference a couple of weeks ago. The opening keynote at Gartner also started saying that number one challenge is either data accessibility or data quality. Because the data ecosystem over time is just getting more and more complicated. And probably many of you have multiple platforms that you are dealing with data, right? Which makes it difficult because you have data silos that you have to integrate across. You probably have multiple copies of the same data, not looking exactly the same. And you have to kind of bring this in a more accurate, more complete, and more consistent manner. So quality is one challenge. And on the second one, we talked about governance, but now with AI, we are no longer looking at quality and governance as their own islands. We have to think about them together. And in governance, we are seeing that if I'm using AI, what's the data that's sourcing the models that I'm using? Because you might be adopting a model, but is that really trained with the data that's not biased? You might have read some of the public cases that white women, female, were rejected healthcare. You have to make sure that the models that you are using are trained with the trusted sources, and you have explainability in the answers or the outcomes that you are getting. And you have to also understand how you are sourcing the data for a particular inference with the problem that you are solving. And then I think the third one we talked about as a challenge is the skills. Data and AI literacy is really important. So you need to invest in the organization. This is public, state, federal, private business, it doesn't matter. We all have to invest in data and AI literacy in our organization so people can use it in a responsible manner. People can have the decision making or assessment of what questions to ask to the vendors, what questions to ask to the models, what questions to ask in those business case considerations.
Can I add one more?
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
just thought of this as you were talking about this. One of the other challenges is it seems like when organizations are looking at bringing in artificial intelligence, they think the rules don't apply, meaning, oh, I don't need governance for this. Oh, I don't need to have quality assurance. Oh, I don't need to do project management and planning. I don't need to develop requirements for this, and you do. AI is not going to do all of that for you. I mean, it can help you. I actually have used it to help refine some requirements for me. What am I missing here? But you've got to put in the work up front. It's not going to do everything for you. And I think a lot of people have that, I would call it literacy, like a AI literacy issue. In fact, one time when I was speaking, and I felt bad because I assumed everybody in the room, because the title of mine was about generative AI, they said, I don't even know the difference between generative AI and all the other AIs.
Yeah.
Can you back up and train us on that? Think of that at scale within your organizations. Many of you understand what generative AI is, but I don't think your organization or your executives or your leaders really necessarily know the difference between machine learning and art and all of the other different applications of artificial intelligence. So I would say, absolutely, training on the basics. Don't assume that your agency or your leadership really understand the capabilities, but they also need to understand some of the limitations and the investments they'll have to make. That's a big challenge.
And Baron, you mentioned this. I heard somebody, I wish I had come up with this, but for the demographics in the room, I'm thinking you understand AI would be like in the late 1990s saying, I have AOL, so I understand the internet. It's sort of the same kind of idea. So, anyway, some of you won't get that, but a lot of us do. I really appreciate the idea. Now let's talk data security, because you guys were talking about the quality data, Tandu, and like having it, but also just having data captured from wherever, whatever data sets you're using. You know, we have a responsibility at Coleridge to make sure all the data we have in our enclaves is secure. I would even argue it's probably one of, if not our main compliance piece for this FedRAMP, where we have data security. Can you guys just open it up, talk a little bit, what are your thoughts? And not just, so using ethical, applications for artificial intelligence is important, but how about the exposure of their data? Let's just open it up to any of you, and then I'll go through to Josh to this at the end. So any thoughts on how you recommend that? Go ahead.
Sure. Actually, I was a bit surprised with the survey results. Let me first understand. Can you raise your hands if you are already using AI, not necessarily Gen AI, any form of machine learning and AI technique in your organization?
Organizational use of AI, show of hands.
That's excellent.
That's a lot.
That's, more than 50%, I think, in the room. That's pretty good. So you can relate to many of the things we are discussing here and can actually voice if you have questions. But for security, so security is one of the challenges because it's a two-sided problem, right? In order to have responsible AI, we have to make sure that we have secure practices, but the advancements of these AI models are also increasing the level of challenges we have with security. It used to be the network security, it used to be the edge point security, securing the physical devices in the network. Now we have to think about the deep fake. We have to think about the prompt injection. So the advancements are definitely increasing the sophistication in these potential security challenges for organizations. So that kind of keeps a lot of people lose sleep overnight in pretty much every IT organization or IT team supporting these organizations. So when we think about security, for those of you who are not familiar with Precisely enables organizations around the world, including 93 of the Fortune 100, to build trust in their data. And we believe that trusted data comes from integration of data, monitoring health of data on an ongoing basis, governing that data lifecycle, and bringing location-based attributes to enrich, like wildfire risk, flood zone risk, environmental climate factors, demographics, and consumer behaviors to get more trusted outcomes. So security, we think about that in that data lifecycle. And one of the things that becomes very important is, are we able to identify and classify sensitive data, PII data? right? That's
a
kind
great
of
segue,
probably, Josh,
Yes,
you may
yeah.
touch base on that. It's a very important thing when you are dealing with data, when you are consolidating, when you are curating data sets. You do not want to have any exposure to PII or sensitive data. So that's kind of like a number one thing. And
That's great.
the second piece with that is who is authorized to see what granularity of that data. Authentication and authorization becomes very important. So that integration to the ecosystem, you don't have to develop everything, but you have to think about the API level integrations that your system can have, so you can actually integrate with the security systems that the platform might be offering, or the vendor that you are working is offering. And then the third piece that is quite critical is, do you have any, in your data pipelines, do you have any points that you might be unintentionally exposing that data or publishing that data to
Oh, yeah.
users that should not be getting those outcomes or results? And that's kind of a important part, in addition to the physical network protection, in addition to the edge point protection. You have to think about that. And then last, you have to really think about prompt injection. So when you are using vendors, you have to make sure you either have a dedicated instance for yourself for that language model, or contractually ways of protecting your organization's data, because your data is going to be your biggest differentiator.
I think that is a very valid point, and I really want to open this up to Josh, because Josh is a data scientist. He is responsible for our influx of data incoming and outcoming. So Josh, I'm really curious, and I think the crowd would love to know your thoughts on how, what would you think is the biggest risk for Coleridge when it comes to data security right now?
Yeah, thanks, Chris. That's a great question. Yeah, I think probably one of the biggest risk is our disclosure review or our export process at Coleridge. I think there's always the human error within disclosure review. The risk is there. We have a pretty structured ingest and export process or disclosure review process, but there are always risks, especially as the analysis gets more complex. If the files are cut different ways, and then also across multiple files, there's always a potential disclosure risk there. When I first started at Coleridge 4 years ago, and I was learning the export process, it was explained to me basically, imagine like a data set as a whole apple, and every export is a bite of that apple. And so you can imagine with enough bytes or enough exports, enough files coming out, you can imagine that there's a risk of re-identifying somebody across files if you know what you're looking for, right? So I think with this implementation of AI and the ethical use of it, I think there's a way to reduce that risk. It also just for my own selfish reasons, improve the export process and the user experience when trying to get files out of the ADRF. But I think the ultimate goal, would be able to increase the utility of the data, but while also decreasing that risk.
It's good. And Baron, do you have anything to add as far as like the risk of data exposure or identifying people? I know you deal with a lot of data sets in your organization, especially federal and state data. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think our greatest security risk is our staff. I mean, and their understanding of appropriate use of tools, whether it's intellectual property, and by intellectual property, what intellectual property would Westep have? Our clients' information is intellectual property. Their applications that we build for them is also. Sometimes in the contracts they put that's ownership of them, and we have staff who maybe are untrained or want to try things out that aren't the official tool. They prefer this flavor of AI versus what we're offering, and even though they're not supposed to, maybe they could potentially use that on the data of our customer, right? That, to me, the systems are a risk, but I think the human impact and the human side of things are always your greatest risk.
Yeah, I agree.
And how do you defend against that? Well, transparency, training, making sure people understand policies around it, making sure they understand the applicability of it to their work, because a lot of times contextualization of why it matters is really important. It's, and continuously doing that. It's not a one and done when it comes to training.
I agree. And so as we move through this process of like identifying tools, you mentioned tools and making sure you have education. And I mean, there's times I am responsible for security at Coleridge, and we have other data scientists that always reach out to me. Katerina is one of them. People, so, hey, Rich, I just noticed that they turned on AI in Google Docs. Am I allowed to use this? And you're like, they just start implementing it without asking the users. And then where the data sits for chatting or putting your information out there is very, very important. I don't think people realize when you use ChatGPT or any of the major models, you're putting your own questions into stuff that never forgets. So you just remember that. It's like being in this, it's like asking a question to a group of people where you think you're individual, but you're not. And it's very nervous for me because there's potential for disclosure there. I mean, we might put a user's information in there just because if somebody's trying to do some analytical study or research, so it's very dangerous. And this is one of the, I talked to Josh months ago when we were talking about implementing our own AI at Coleridge as part of this PASS management portal that Ahu brought up in the first day we started talking. We're really proud of what we've been able to do because we're doing it in a very methodical, thoughtful way. And Josh came up, I asked the data scientists at Coleridge, like, what's the good way of using this? Josh said, I could use AI as part of our triaging of our disclosure data in exports. And I just thought that was a genius. Josh is a smart guy. I thought that was a genius use of AI. And so I'm going to demonstrate that. We have about 10 more minutes. But before I do, I want to ask the panelists, is there anything, I know, Tandy, we were talking about how to get started. It seemed like a lot of people are started already in AI, but just real quick, do you have an idea, like tell people what your maybe tips on getting started with AI would be?
You actually mentioned this before. I think it's a very important point. Always start with the business use case.
Yes, right.
It's not a hammer looking for a nail. And to be honest, many of the agencies have been using artificial intelligence and for security intelligence and face recognition and many other use cases for decades now, right? Some of you have been in advanced stage of this, but always start with a business case if you are starting now. The second piece is be proactive about the data. Be proactive about bringing all relevant data, because if you miss a geography or if you miss a demographic, you can create bias very easily in the data sets that you are working with. Be proactive about the monitoring health of that data, because thinking about the metadata, the descriptions of data becomes very important in the context of AI, because you have to continuously monitor the health of the data and continuously monitor the almost like secure that pipeline as well, and govern that life cycle, both data and AI life cycle, so you can actually report when you have to be in the other side of the audit. You have to report your use of AI as well. And then the last thing I will say that it's really important that you take advantage of the automation and AI techniques and Gen AI as much as possible to automate those life cycles, data life cycles, or work with organizations who does that for you and for your organization. But what I gave as an example before, thinking about the alternative data sets really becomes important, because we have seen what happened with the wildfires, unfortunately, in California. We work very closely with San Bernardino County, which is historically one of the most affected areas. But It's also helpful for you, for some of the organizations who might be looking for grants, for example, for risk analysis for climate events. Or last night at dinner, there was a conversation about K-12 school-related data analysis. And there are so many alternative things that you want to take into account when you are solving that problem. So think about the bigger picture in terms of which data sets to include.
Great. Any last? I'd like to demo. We got about 15 minutes. It won't take long to show. But any final comments, thoughts, questions, acknowledge? Well, good. I think we'll thank the panelists at the end. I want to kind of go through this a little bit. But before I do, I want to recognize Burjesh, who's our senior architect. Without his help, none of this works. As you guys know, we need the people in the background. So thank you, Burjesh. And then we also have a gentleman who's John Kearns, a young guy, one of those young, smart, goodwill hunting kind of level smart, who's helped us build out this application. And he's not in here. I don't think John Kearns is in here, but if he was, we should give him a round of applause. He's really a good kid, so he's great at helping us, sir. So thank you. And then lastly, Jeff Holster, who's our partner. We're going to see him in the final one of our panels later on, collaboration, and they're a partner with us on helping us do software development. They're really bringing in the dev team to help us do this. So I wanted to show you this. This is air-gapped. This is inside the ADRF. It's not to be disclosed. That's very important. And you brought this up about, and same with Josh, that our data, our AI agents cannot reach out to the internet. There is no way it can happen. It's locked within our enclaves. And this is just the beginning. If you recognize what this looks like, if you've been in the ADRF, this is the new piece that's going to start coming up here in the next few days. This is inside the ADRF. It's red for a reason. We want people to recognize, because we have another application that's the pass that sits outside the ADRF to help you do your disclosure, your data, your user, your password reset, all this other stuff. But I wanted to show this. We've got dashboards. We have this AI assistant that's here. I have not implemented inside the ADRF for reasons that I need to make sure our authorizing official USDA is okay with this. So we're doing this responsibly. And I don't think there's an issue. I talked to them yesterday. They were here. They're going to be on the panel later this afternoon. They're excited to see this as well. But I am running it locally. So this is what the Coleridge Initiative AI assistant will look like. And it's specifically, the business case for us is in data exports, okay? And if anyone's ever used AI, which I think everybody in here has, the two big factors for AI is what model are you using and how good is your prompt, okay? Because sometimes these things are not the smartest when you ask it dumb questions, it gives you dumb answers, right? So what I've done is, this LLM has been trained. It's not a pre-trained model. I actually just trained it, and it's not the smartest LLM, so it may come up with some funky answers here. So bear with me. We may need to ask the question several times. I've got other models here. I've got a Llama, which is the Meta main model LLM, but I've got our own currently. On the left-hand side, I've got workspaces. By the way, when you log in, this will have all of the accoutrements of logging in, as it'll be federated. So when you're in the AI assistant, you'll have access to this. Right now, we're only using for data exports. We've limited only for that. Eventually, it'll be there for code help, and it'll work within the IDE, the development environment within the ADRF, which we're implementing VS Code here soon. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to ask the question of, I have two sets of data. I'm going to show you one, and it's got some PI, and it's fake PI, of course. So we're going to prompt this. So I have a prompt ready to go. Look at this. And you see all of my notes from my life there, just so in case you guys got to see. And the prompt basically is saying, you're an agent. You guys understand how prompting is like, you got to do these kind of sequence. You're an agent. You're going to be analyzing some CSV, it's comma separated value files. I want you to look at anything in here that may be unhashed that looks like PI to you. Okay, and then I'm going to add some files here. And I've got some somewhat unsecure data, and now we're gonna see what happens. Okay, it's testing. I'm using my cell phone, right? Let's see how it goes here. It's gonna analyze. Again, this is locked inside my laptop. It goes nowhere. So it's doing the generative piece with my own CPU. And it's asking me a question back, which I think is interesting about this model. It's saying, I don't really understand what you're asking me. Can you say it again? So I'm just gonna paste it in here again, do the same thing. It's like asking my kids. No, I'm just going to ask you the same question. Clean your room. When are you cleaning your room? Okay. Okay, so now it's going to come up there. It's identifying where the problems are in the file. To me, this is a great business case for data exports. It's telling you where this is at, like all of these problems within your file. What Josh and I talked about doing, and it's there, is it's scoring the data. It's asked to score it, and it's out of a maximum of 100. It made more than 100. It found that much problem with the thing. So in the data exports, the triage will be the data scientist or data steward, or even our own Coleridge staff will go in, it'll triage, and it will score the data live so they can see that there might be problems in the disclosure. As Josh was mentioning, the biggest problem is, and Baron made this, is the human. We see things all the time, we miss, we get suppressed. I mean, Josh has got open tickets for exports. He's got 20 a day. So the team is constantly going through these data exports, and we're trying to lighten that time. I mean, anything you want to bring up about this or thoughts about how data exports could be better with this?
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, you can imagine the influx, especially around maybe conferences or publications around that time of year. Our team gets overwhelmed. It's easy to have 30, 40 open requests, and we have to go through them. It's a very manual process. We open each file, we look at it, we check to make sure there's nothing disclosive in it. So I mean, you can imagine how that process can not break down, but there's a risk for human error with that process. I mean, the team is great. We do our best to minimize every disclosure review issue. Yeah, there's always a risk.
And Josh, you mentioned to me when we were talking outside that it's the severity and probability of the data exposure. So the severity is maybe it's small, but a lot of it, it increases severity, and the probability is high because it's human.
Right.
When I say high, moderate to high, and we have to be very careful. Where AI can help you with that sort of unknown risk. Exactly. It's reducing you may not realize that there's unsuppressed data or hash values that aren't really hashed. Maybe they're base 64, instead of hashed.
Right.
And so that's why AI is good. To a human eye, a base 64 looks like a hash value, but base 64 is just a simple transposition of data inside your database. A lot of databases use base 64 obscurity is what it's called. And so AI would be able to pick up those. I've seen it on our own data, like, oh, this isn't hashed, this is obscured. It's not the same. Mm-hmm. So this is where AI could be good. You and I talked about this.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've got about 5 more minutes. I just want to ask up the panel if you have any thoughts or comments on what I just demonstrated, or any questions from the audience on this data disclosure. Okay, hearing nothing. I really appreciate everybody's time. We're going to do this again next year, and this thing will be running in a unique way. We're going to keep pushing the envelope on technology, but doing it responsibly. Right, Baron?
That's right.
Okay. Thank you very much, guys.
You have a question over there, Rich?
Oh, we got a question, please. Klaus, you got a question? He's like, no.
Another break.
It's okay. Be your best orator.
Yeah, so.
And I can't speak for this specific model, but I think one thing I'm struggling with Gen AI is people using things like ChatGPT as a search engine and not realizing that, like, a lot of times you're like a 50-50 chance that it's just going to be completely made up. So I'm wondering how you're training folks to maybe kind of check those answers rather than just taking it at face value.
Okay. So the question was using the generative portion, predictive modeling, right, of LLM. When you do it like a ChatGPT or something, it comes up with a thing called hallucinations, where it makes up its own. And as the models become more improved, like the LLM that I'm using now is based on the Llama 3.3, which is, I think, 7 billion training tokens. It was tokenized. And you're asking, well, how do you get away from hallucinations? The key is in the training. And our other data scientists here, Deedham and I, and her team have been working on training a pre-trained model into just looking at PI. And so what it's supposed to do for this data export is just point the researcher to problems. If they're not there, then of course it's there. The good thing is it's sort of like a null hypothesis. If you find PI, let me know. It's not saying, is there PI in this? And it's what Tandu was talking about. It's the way you ask the question. If you ask it the prompting in a way where you just want to, like, is there PI? Nope, we're good. No, you're saying, show me where the PI issues are. And if it can't find anything, doesn't mean that you don't still do the export review piece. It's just to speed it up and make sure you don't miss something. It's supposed to help you, not hurt you. But it's a great question. Hallucination on LLMs
I can
are great.
add,
Please.
For that question, let's say that you picked two models that you want to compare and see how the hallucinations happen. One of the ways that that you can actually start reducing the level of hallucinations is use your trusted data set from your organization as almost like a lookup table to verify the outcomes. And that's a technique that's called retrieval augmented generation, RAG. You might hear it. But ultimately, it's not using your organization's data to train the model, but it is using as a lookup when validating the outcomes. So it is a very important factor in reducing the hallucination rate. That's something I would recommend.
Question
Hey,
back
Rich, can I
there.
jump in here real quick?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, just to touch on that context of exports and what I was just talking about, I don't see this AI this AI review replacing a human review. I think it's just going to be a tool that we can use. So I don't want people thinking that this is just going to replace 100% of the human review. It's just going to be able to point out something that we may have missed. There's always going to be some type of human involvement with these reviews.
That's a very important point. I think human in the loop, you hear people talking about autonomous agents, etc. There are use cases like in procurement or contracts that semi-autonomous agents might automate very well-defined workflows, but we need human in the loop approval even when you are using techniques to reduce hallucinations.
Okay, question back there, ma'am. Go ahead.
Hi, Josh. It looks like you're really in need of a synthetic colleague in order to help with your reviews of the experts.
Synthetic colleague.
Yes, synthetic colleague. Have you thought about maybe giving access to the researchers before they submit their request to have their analysis exported?
Yeah,
the option of
yes.
being able to review their work, so that way we can adjust before it gets to Josh.
So the question is, can we use the AI assistant to help the researchers before they export their data to just put it into the queue for data exports? We thought of that's, I think if John Mills is in the room, that was John's idea at one point, is to, and we probably will implement that. So as they upload it into the exports module, which is, on the right here, we have the exports module, it would automatically score it for them so they could resubmit later, like maybe they see it. Yeah, it's a brilliant idea. Let the researcher have the first whack at it. Yeah, that's great. It's a great idea. Any questions or comments? Please, sir.
I actually want to,
step back from the AI here and ask the panel in general. It seemed like there was two kind of specific problems that agencies were facing, and one of the sides was the maturity of the data ecosystem that they're trying to bring AI